Today I'm going to use natural ingredients for my greeting card. Welcome to my channel, Julie's Kreativschatzkiste. My name is Julia, I'm from Austria and I love card making and paper crafting. For my card I use an A6 panel of watercolor cardstock. In my garden I collected some sage leaves that have a beautiful structure. To begin my card I'm going to die cut a stitched rectangle out of my card panel. To do so, I use this metric stitched rectangle dies from Heffy Doodle. I try to position the die in the center of my card and then I'm going to use my die cutting machine to cut it out. I'm going to do this a second time from scrap paper in order to be able to strengthen my frame when I glue it to my card base later. As I want the frame to fit to my finished card, I'm going to use Lucky Clover Distress Oxide and color the frame with it. By the way, my channel is new on YouTube, but I'm planning a lot of videos already, and I would be very happy if you would subscribe to my channel. Distress oxides do not dry immediately, so I use a paper scrap in order to avoid fingerprints on my frame. Next, I'm going to use my stamping platform. I take the inner bit of our card panel and position it in the center of the platform. Now it's time to get out the main ingredient for our card, the sage leaves from my garden. I tried to collect leaves in different sizes to get some variation on the card. I'm arranging the leaves on my card panel with the nice side of the leaves facing up because the nice structure of the leaves is on the back, and that's what we are going to use for stamping. Once I'm happy with the arrangement of the leaves, I use tape to stick the leaves to the lid of my stamping platform. I use little bits of tape and I form rings with them which I put on my leaves, so they are positioned correctly once I close the lid of the stamping platform. Alright, now it's time to close the lid. When I do so, I press very hard on every bit of tape, just to make sure that the leaves really stick to the lid. Voila! I'm using Distress Oxide Lucky Clover again in order to get pigment on the leaves. A press and twist movement is ideal to do so. Once I close the lid, I'm going to press very heavy on all the leaves in order to ensure the best transfer of pigment from the leaves to the paper. But if it doesn't work the first time, don't worry, because that's why we have the stamping platform. The leaves remain exactly in the same position and we can stamp once again. Now's the time to get out my heat embossing tools, because I don't want to stamp the leaves, I want to use them for heat embossing. So first I spread some clear heat embossing powder evenly over my stamped leaves. Fortunately, Distress Oxide does not dry immediately, so it's easy to use for heat embossing. In order to get rid of the surplus embossing powder, I gently tap my paper. When using my heat tool, I'm careful that I spread the heat evenly, and through the heat the Lucky Clover is shining beautifully. In order to avoid the paper warping, I'm careful that I flip the paper from time to time and also heat the back side of the paper, because then it's going to unwarp again. Isn't that looking nice already? Next we're going to make a beautiful background behind the leaves. I'm using Distress Oxides again because they're blending so nicely. I use Wild Honey, Carved Pumpkin and Crackling Campfire. I really love these colors because they're creating such a nice sunset. When blending, I start with the lightest color, Wild Honey in this case. The colors should always overlap to get a nice blending effect. My little paper scrap is handy again to avoid fingerprints on the still moist color. After the last color, it is good advice to come back to the first and second color to get a smooth transition of the blending. Subsequently, I'm drying the pigment with my heat tool, and again, I'm careful to also flip the paper and apply heat from the back to avoid warping. This would already be a nice background, but it gets better. First, the classic effect. Distress oxides react beautifully with water, so I spritz some drops of water on the paper and dry them with a kitchen towel. Additionally, I took a stencil from my stash with leaves to get impressions on the background. To do so, I position the stencil on my background. I use a wet kitchen towel and press the water into the stencil for some seconds. Afterwards, I take a dry kitchen towel and dry the stencil on the card. When I take off the stencil, you can already see a slight impression of a leaf. But it even gets better once you used your heat tool on the paper and the paper is dry, because then you can really see the leaf beautifully. I did repeat this process with another leaf on the other side of the card. I really like this background already, but there's one step still missing. I wanted to have some glitter on my card, so I took out my metallic watercolors. I chose a nice turquoise color and I watered it down quite a bit. With the help of a brush and a stamping block, I tried to get some even drops which are not too big. Again, I use my heat tool to dry the paper. The background of the card is now finished, and now it's time for embellishments. First, I took these dies from Sizzix and Holtz and I chose the largest butterfly. I also took out some white glitter cardstock and I die cut this butterfly not once but twice. Before I get the butterfly out of the die, I use a die pick to get rid of these small paper pieces because it's easier to do so now. Then it's time to get the butterfly very carefully out of the die and to clean up the last little paper pieces. Alright, that's done. Now is the time to think about the placement of my butterfly. I also get out the frame again and think about the positioning of everything. Yes, I like that. Now it's time to get out a blank card base and to fold it. In order to make the positioning of the inner part easier, I first glue the frame to the cardstock. To do so, I also get out the second frame, which I cut in the beginning to strengthen my frame. I first glue my paper scrap frame to my real frame, and then I take both frames and glue them to the card base. If there's some white showing from the paper scrap frame, you can either cut that with your scissors, or you take your ink and your blending brush and color it. When I use liquid glue, I either put something heavy on it or I just hold it for some seconds until it is dry. The next step is easy. We just cover the inner part of the paper evenly with liquid glue and we put it in the middle of the frame. Ta-da! That's done. Next it's time to bring out the butterflies again. My plan is to glue one fully to the card base and the other one just in the middle to get a kind of 3D effect. By the way, my liquid glue is Collage Medium from Ranger. I really like it because it dries matte, and if you use too much glue and it spills out of your die cut on the card, you can't see it after it is dry. As final touch, I use a small dewdrop as embellishment of the butterfly. I use liquid glue to attach it and plop! That's perfect. Lastly, there's only the sentiment missing from my card. I use a happy birthday because one can never have enough birthday cards. Alright, now our card is finished and ready to be given away. Did you ever try to use leaves for a card? Let me know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching my video and I hope to see you again soon on my channel. Ciao!